as it, which marked the beginning of a new era regarding the status of Abkhazia. After the 2008 war, Abkhazia has been de jure recognized by 6 countries, all of which are members of the United Nations. And this recognition has created both important prospects for the wider international recognition of Abkhazia, and at the same time created new challenges. So I'll be starting with a brief introduction, brief overview of the theory of state recognition, and then we'll go on the implications and the current state of affairs in terms of the state recognition practices across the world. And then I'll discuss the implications and finish up with a focus on diaspora, the role of diaspora. Well, there are 2 competing theories of state recognition. The first one, the constitutive theory, states that an entity becomes a state only when it is recognized as such. So in this respect, recognition becomes an essential requirement for statehood. And one of the major criticisms leveled at the constitutive theory is that according to the constitutive theory, statehood is a relative and subjective rather than an objective or absolute concept, and due to a number of questions such as how many recognizing states are needed for recognition, for statehood, and whether the decision should be based on the facts, norms, political considerations, or both. And however, according to the declaratory theory, statehood is fully determined by a set of factual conditions, which are a permanent population, a fixed territory, an effective government able to control its territory, and the ability to enter into international relations on its own account. So recognition in this theory is nothing more than an official confirmation of a factual situation. However, the declaratory school has also attracted many criticisms, the major of which is that it often lends itself to strategic and political manipulation by the powerful states. And currently, while the declaratory position seems to be dominant within the academic circles, the constitutive approach seems to be dominant in practice. And moreover, even with the declaratory position, as it is often pointed out that non-recognized entities have no international legal personality and thus cannot be recognized as a state, even if they meet all the requirements outlined above, the recognition issue is still a very important point, irrespective of the positions adopted. In addition, the aftermath of the dissolution of Yugoslavia brought about some fundamental changes and new norms, in addition to the traditional ones. During this process, different from the traditional legal framework, the European community made reference to the right to self-determination, which was traditionally confined to the colonial context, and secondly, the democratic commitment, and thirdly, commitment to disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation as important principles in the recognition of new states. However, the rules were not applied in a very consistent manner. Furthermore, when Kosovo declared its independence from Serbia in 2008, the international reactions to it further complicated the situation. In the justifications for the decision to recognize Kosovo, there was almost no reference to international law. States that recognize Kosovo has almost invariably justified their decision to grant recognition by referring to political considerations, most notably the need for stability, peace and security in the region, and the positive effects recognition would have on these parameters. As you know, several recognizing states also stress the unique character of Kosovo, so-called unique character of Kosovo. I think the parallels are quite obvious, in an attempt to refute the claims that a precedent was being set and subsequently, after the recognition of Abkhazia and South Ossetia by 6 countries, all of which are the members of United Nations, we faced a fundamental crisis of international law and politics, but we didn't come up with any definitive answers in the state recognition practices. On the contrary, the current situation shows that the state recognition practice is characterized by a declining role of international law, but an increasing role of political convenience and interests. It seems to be the case that the international law has been demoted to a position where it is primarily used to support decisions made on the basis of political consideration. Within such a climate of affairs, what is of course needed in the first place is a normative, institutionalized practice of recognition, which is based on justice-based criteria to which prospective states will be subjected to. However, the current practice of recognition and of international relations is not painting a very promising picture in this regard, nor does it allow to expect a solution that would be acceptable to all the parties involved in the situation of Abkhazia in a near future. Yet, they provide a number of implications and insights which might be helpful to consider while pursuing a broader international recognition of Abkhazia. First of all, despite the dominance of the constitutive approach in practice, both the traditional and the legal new criteria of declaratory theory are still of a binding nature. Thus, every effort to strengthen the relevant conditions and norms to these criteria would demonstrate Abkhazia's commitment to the requirements of international law to international community. Secondly, despite all the strong evidence and justifications, unfortunately, the double standards argument seems to be of no use in the short run, as there is almost no exception to the highly selective and politicized practice of state recognition worldwide. Given that little is in fact known about the situation in Abkhazia by the majority of international community, by the common people, more efforts could rather be directed to inform the world of the legitimacy of Abkhazia's case in order to forge public opinion at the international level in the long run. And thirdly, the growing awareness regarding the impossibility of the restoration of Georgia's so-called territorial integrity among the international community could be exploited to establish direct relations with the EU and Turkey, especially at non-governmental level initially, in the ways that are acceptable for both Abkhazia and the international community. They might increase the visibility of Abkhazia as well as provide opportunities to tell its case. Now I would like to turn to the issue of diaspora in Turkey very briefly. Let me start with a brief introduction to the diaspora. First of all, in Turkey, I'll use the term Circassian diaspora because in Turkey the term Circassian has a wider sense of Abkhaz or North Caucasian because they have always lived together in close proximity to each other. They have lived in a common history, exile and feature and culture, and they have interacted and cooperated at various times in various ways throughout the history. And although there aren't any official figures at the moment, it is estimated that there are approximately 3 to 7 million Circassians living in Turkey. Despite all the commonalities, of course, we can't speak of a monolithic, homogeneous block of political thought among the Circassians. There are multiple lines of thought, which are usually pertaining to Circassian groups and associations. And furthermore, the 1990s witnessed the emergence of new challenges for diasporic identities of Circassians as a result of the changing notions of time and space, as well as the socio-political circumstances. While on the one hand there emerged a shift from an understanding of an imagined homeland to a real territory, on the other hand, the enhancement of telecommunications and the relative ease of travel have created the possibility of co-construction of multiple identities which make possible to live both in diaspora and at home, in the homeland, and to develop a sense of belonging both here and there. It should also be noted that there are very strong social and historical ties which connect these groups in diaspora in various ways. And it is the maintenance of these strong ties alongside the diversity and differences which would make the Circassian diaspora a more influential pressing group and a more powerful actor both in Turkey and the EU. Accordingly, in accordance with the complex composition of the diaspora, there are many civil organizations and foundations. We can speak of at least 15 organizations with which Circassian diaspora in Turkey have contacts at various degrees. Among those organizations, the Federation of Caucasus organizations is the largest associational network in Turkey, with around 60 member associations all around Turkey. KAFFED commits itself to the political representation of Circassian diaspora in Turkey, as well as the development of active and effective political participation strategies among the Circassian diaspora. While KAFFED is always concerned with the political processes in the homeland in general, it supports Abkhazia's drive for strengthening its independence and a free, democratic and prosperous country. More specifically, KAFFED considers Abkhazia as an essential part of the cultural identity and guarantor for cultural survival and revival, acknowledges the decisive importance of the international recognition of Abkhazia for peace and stability in the region, and demands the recognition of Abkhazia as an independent state by Turkey and the international community. In this regard, while being committed to undoing the historical injustices, KAFFED supports the considerate diplomatic means of mutual understanding compromise without jeopardizing the prospects for the future of Abkhazia that have emerged as a result of the recognition of its independence by some members of the international community, including the Russian Federation. So the final question I'll be focusing on is how diaspora in Turkey can provide more political support and contribution to Abkhazia. The Circassian diaspora in Turkey, which has a large population that pays strong attention to both Abkhazia and North Caucasus, has the potential of becoming a more effective pressure group to the interests of Abkhazia both in Turkey and in the EU. It can and must make this impact. On this matter, however, the quality of diaspora-Abkhazia relations is of great significance. There are, of course, certain difficulties we face that we have to deal with on our own in Turkey and we have to deal with together with Abkhazia. Firstly, this potential could be realized more easily and faster when those people are united with a shared vision rather than divided by ethnic lines. This in fact already reflects a long-lived perception among the Circassian diaspora in Turkey. Therefore, considerate steps that will be taken to increase a mutual understanding rather than to strengthen the negative attitude in Abkhaz-Adygean relations both in the homeland and in the diaspora would be of great benefit to the realization of this potential. And secondly, what is of course needed is the development of more effective, dynamic and multilateral communication channels between the members of diaspora and Abkhazia, which will facilitate the political involvement of the diaspora. To be able to reach that, it's necessary to acknowledge the naturalness of the different expectations and disagreements between diaspora members, as well as between the homeland and diaspora. The unique and complex identity of Circassian diaspora in Turkey, just like any other diaspora. The diaspora has been through its own processes, created its own dynamics in Turkey while longing for the homeland, and now accordingly has its own problems too. Despite the increasing numbers of young people claiming their Circassian identity in Turkey, and despite the achievements obtained so far, we're still in need of accelerating the politicization process, a process of transition from cultural identity to cultural political identity. And the question is, we believe, how to harmonize these differences with the actions of both the diaspora and the homeland to be able to build up a common vision and perception, but not how to nurture these differences and contradictions that might lend themselves into further tensions. On the whole, the Circassian diaspora in Turkey, with a population over millions, is an assurance for Abkhazia and Abkhazia is the historical homeland for us. It's always a source and aspiration for cultural survival and revival for the diaspora. We have every confidence that the independence of Abkhazia will be recognized by the international community, and one of the major roles throughout this process shall be played by diaspora living in Turkey. Thank you very much.